So today we're talking about transitions, and for our intros today, I'd like to know just your name and are you currently going through a transition or considering transitioning from one relationship style to another? So it could be like for me, 4 years ago, I was lovers with somebody. I had just gone through a divorce and I had to ask him to transition to being in a committed relationship. So, it's funny because transitions in poly, we think about it from monogamous to polyamorous, or from polyamorous to having more than one partner, or from doing a primary secondary model, if that's what you do, to some other model where, you're doing a non-hierarchy or relationship anarchy as some do. But really, transitions happen all of the time, everywhere in our lives. And I really believe that the ideas that we can share and the ways we can talk to each other about transitioning from one change to another in general can really help just with stuff in life. So the question is, are you currently in the middle of some kind of transition or wanting to transition your relationship from one step to another step, or are you not? So you say your name, you'll say, yes, I'm in a middle of transition, or no, I am not in the middle of a transition currently. And then you can just call someone else on the screen. And while that's happening, I will be jotting down the names of everybody called. And as we get toward the end, when no one knows who's been called and who hasn't been, I'll just take over and call people on my own. So I am Lily. I am currently not transitioning in my relationship, in any parts of my relationship. And I'm going to throw it over to
I'm Devin. I am co-hosting with Lily. We are girlfriends. Our partner is off doing a production job, so he is out of town. So we're hosting this together. I am not currently in a transition, but I've had a lot of experiences with different iterations, and I'm excited to share with you all. And yeah.
I use this thing online for people to write responses if you want to. It's not necessary. What's kind of cool about writing responses is that you get to kind of like take the information and interact with the information in a way. We may do breakout rooms, we may not, because we might just be workshopping things aloud. But I think more than anything else, the first thing I really want to teach, this has really struck me, is to remember that all change is loss, every kind. All change has loss. And I think that as a society, we forget that all change is loss. And sometimes when we transition, particularly in poly paradigms, from one relationship style to another, there is a loss. Whether we're going from, even just transitioning from being primary partners to getting more people in the relationship, there will be loss when that happens. All changes loss is really obvious with sad changes like divorces, breakups, job loss, or death. We can totally tell that change is loss, but we don't appreciate how even good change has loss. Marriages, new partners, new lovers, a new job, going to college, graduating, new house. So I'm going to ask you guys, and just you can popcorn out, what are some transitions that you've experienced, positive transitions that have had real losses in your life? I'll give you a quick example. It's really common when people go from single to being in a relationship, they can lose autonomy. They can lose alone time. They can lose space. They can lose, and something, there's just so many other things that they can lose. I think when I went from living apart from my partner to living together, which was awesome, we lost the space of being able to tease each other from afar. And we had to kind of come to terms with that. We had to be aware, like, we're getting into this transition and we're going to lose that together. And how is that going to affect our relationship? And that's something we had to contend with, and we're still contending with, my partner and I. So for you guys, what are positive transitions that have had real losses?
Are we saying it out loud? Are we writing it down? What are we doing?
Thank you for asking, Gregory. You're going to say it out loud. I think that what really helps to run smoothly through a transition is to acknowledge on all sides what is being lost and to allow oneself to grieve for that loss, even if it's just for a moment. Because if you're going to try to transition from one style to another, or from relationship modes, or even from one partner to another, I think that culturally we are conditioned to be like, this is a good thing, let's go, I don't feel bad at all. But that's not true. And I think sometimes it's hard to grieve things like what Terrence said, which are much more conceptual, the loss of an old way of thinking. That is like a base sense of who you are, and that is leaving you now. And you're allowed to see that thing going away and go, wow, that's hard to see that leave. It doesn't have to be more than a moment. You don't have to spend like, a week and a half. You don't have to have a whole ceremony and a burial or anything like that. But sometimes you do have to do that, and I think that we are less likely to be blindsided by fallout out of transition when we take this into consideration, not just for ourselves, but for all parties. If we can tell the person who we're going to say, I'm transitioning from this to this, and we say, I acknowledge that you're going to lose something, can you imagine how seen that person feels? And can you imagine how seen you would feel if you can articulate your loss and what you're losing in this transition, even if they're positive? And then Devin, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that highlighting the concept of grief being a part of this process is really powerful and important. And it's something that I've learned a lot in recent years, what grief actually feels like for me. And I've been able to identify it a little bit quicker than in the past. But it's something where rather than focusing on all the positive feelings I think I should be feeling because of this change and sort of dismissing the turmoil or dismissing the grief, I'm actually able to sit with it and acknowledge it and let it be a part of the experience, so that surrender can create more surrender and understanding between me and my partners, or me and myself, or whatever it is, and allowing it to be part of the experience. Because I know that, at least for myself, I've spent so many years of my life trying to convince myself that I have no reason to ever feel bad, that my life is so blessed, and that I'm not allowed to feel sad, like things that have kind of been taught from my childhood, that it's just been really healing for me to acknowledge that there is space to feel loss and grief and have that contribute to feelings of joy that come when you become familiar and comfortable with your new situation. Because that note that I added on the last slide is about the brain. It is comfortable with familiarity, and anything that is outside of that creates discomfort, which, as we know, can be a space for growth, but it can also be a space for despair if we allow it to become that.
Yeah, so I was really, really appreciative of the fact we have two kind of very different. We have one that's very concrete, like we had Lindsay's example, which was, I moved into a business partnership and we have lost X. And Terrence's was more conceptual. I moved to this and now I have lost this. I'm moving to this concept of poly, and I've lost my ideas about monogamy and whole ways of being that I maybe have been for, my entire life. And there are things that we lose there, and losing ideas can be really scary and really painful. And do I have anyone else, as we're speaking about this, who's becoming perhaps more familiar with their own sense of loss during a positive, or it can be negative as well, transition? Something else I'd like to point out is that poly relationships are sometimes, we think of poly, we're all poly. We all have multiple loves. We have our love of pizza and our love of salad. We have our love of our job and our love of this group of friends and that other group of friends that's like 20 years old, but you really still value them. You have your love, and then it does transition to lovers. Like you have your love of this partner and you might have your love of that partner as well. And sometimes when you're trying to move between partners or move from one type of partnership to another partnership, it can help to pull back and remember that you've been juggling love for a long time. We all have. Every single one of us juggles love constantly. And I think that's another way to help with moving from one relationship paradigm to another one, or moving from one partner to another one, or moving from primary to secondary. Wherever you're moving, remember you have moved in many other places. The fact that it's polyamory and it's loversness and it's like romantic, it doesn't make it too far different from the other ways that you have experienced this as well. So the tools that we can use when you go from one job to another are the same tools you can use when you go from one partner to another, a relationship to another. So I'm going to go to, we have a new person named Lily. Hi, Lily. I want to go to the next one. Now I have a few, oh no, this slide did not complete. That's embarrassing. That's fine. I'm going to show it anyway. So I have a few transition don'ts that are really important. Transition don'ts. Don't allow other parties to force the transition for you. As in, your new partner tells the old partner that they want the change. Any transition should be coming from you, from your heart, from your mouth. It can be really easy when we're moving in transitions, particularly if the transitions are negative, and I don't just mean other parties as in humans. I mean other parties as in experiences as well. We let the fact that we're no longer making them their favorite dinner do the talking for us or something like that. So we want to be clear that when you're transitioning, and this is the sad part of it, that you're not allowing other parties, objects, or behaviors to force the transitions for you. In relationships, we're notorious for this stuff. It's like a classic thing, like a person cheating on their partner so they can have a breakup. But that takes a lot of awareness as well, right? And it takes a lot of bravery and strength. Have you guys experienced allowing someone else to force it, or have you had experience when someone else someone else who wasn't your partner made the transition for you? Like when I was divorced, the most painful part of my divorce was not divorcing. Divorcing was it wasn't my favorite, but I knew stuff was over. What was lame about my divorce is that my ex-partner's new partner informed me that my ex-partner wanted a divorce. My ex-partner did not tell me. But here's the thing, that's a very concrete version of this. It can happen in actions too. Like if you are a primary partner with somebody else and then you start seeing somebody else like a lover, and then you have the lover come over more often, and then you're spending 3 days a week with the lover, and then you're buying the lover a bunch of things, and suddenly you realize that we've transitioned to something that's not like primary with lover, but it's more like a straight three-way, and there was no conversation had at all. You're allowing the behavior to dictate the transition, to tell the partner of the transition. That almost never feels good. Sometimes it can feel easier at first, like, I won't tell anybody. No one will know. It'll just creep in. It'll be fine. And we do that sometimes just because by mistake. But that's a really painful way to transition, is to transition the snail way, slowly and quietly, and just pretend it's not happening, even though you're leaving a trail behind you that makes it really obvious.
Yeah. And to kind of bring that to like a macro view of how that might apply to any life situation is just if allowing your circumstances to dictate your actions, your circumstances to dictate your emotions, outside forces being the thing that make the choices for you rather than you making the choice for yourself.
And to your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what also can play into this is our past experiences shaping our beliefs about what will happen next and letting patterns repeat. Because if it happened this way in a past relationship and I'm seeing all the signs now, then that's the obvious next step because that's how it's happened. So it's our circumstances and our beliefs letting that be what makes the next choice for you.
Yeah. This requires and requests really clear awareness. Like, this is what I want. This is where I'm going. Devin, this was more the second one was yours. I want to get up and get myself a quick drink.
Yeah. So I wrote something onto the slide that's not showing up for some reason, but I wrote as one of the don'ts, falling into.
Go ahead and speak. I will reload the slide so that some of the things that didn't appear will appear.
No problem. I wrote in falling into the trap of blame, basically asking what's wrong with me or what's wrong with them when you're feeling like you're not getting the results that you're looking for during a transition, or it's not going a way that you planned or hoped for, and having that immediately bring up feelings of being wrong or of someone else being wrong. Falling into the trap of blame, aka asking what's wrong with me or asking what's wrong with them when it comes to a period of transition, automatically identifying that there is something inherently wrong with either party in the situation. And I will say that everything that we discuss in these workshops and things that we experience in polyamorous relationships are not exclusive to polyamorous relationships. These are things that happen in all types of relationship styles and monogamy, and it's just, if you're looking at that issue on a scale of including more than one other person, there are like subtle nuances that do come up, but anything that we speak about here, it does apply.
Yeah, that's the way we run all of our poly workshops, because most of the stuff that works for us incredibly well in poly, we have learned is really the stuff that has governed my life. Like, there's no tricks for polyamorous living that I don't apply everywhere around me, and there's nothing I have learned in the outside world that I haven't applied to my polyamorous living. The idea of change is loss actually comes from being a school leader, and I learned about it when we were talking about how to lead schools, and how whenever you change a policy, a school policy, you have to address loss. And I was like, oh my God, we don't address loss at all when it comes to our relationships, or if we do, it's in a very rocky, emotion-laden experience. It's not, and especially not usually when it's a good transition. We don't sit and go, you know what? I am now getting into a fully committed partnership. I'm going to lose the ability to get up at 3 a.m. and make myself tea and fling it off the bridge whenever I want. Like, whatever it is that you want to do, we don't acknowledge that. Another part is transition don'ts. Don't force transitions to happen quicker than they should. Like, for example, don't try to force. So what happened in our experience was I was with my current committed partner, and we had another person who wanted to really be a really important part of my partner's experience. She wanted to she wanted to be not as important. She just really wanted to have the same. This gets rocky because it gets into relationship hierarchy, and I don't have a hierarchy for emotions. But she had known my partner for a year. At that time, I had known my partner for 7, and we've been co-producers and lovers for a really long time. And it was really difficult for her to understand. She wanted to have the same closeness with my partner that I had with him, but that was impossible. She can't have that. Not because she's not awesome, not because of that, but it was just time. It was literally just time spent together. But it was really something she was trying to make happen. And I think that in polyamorous especially, sometimes people walk into relationships, to already established relationships, and they want to be just as established immediately, and that's not going to work solely based on time. It's just time. That's all it is.
Yep.
Has anyone had that experience for people who are like really practicing poly?
Yeah. And I will say that this was a female that he was dating prior to my coming into the relationship, and it really did have an effect on both him and Lily, and some apprehensiveness came up because it was like it didn't feel as though it was a result of their actions or the way that they treated her, but it came from some hurt part inside of her that really needed healing, that wasn't going to come from this relationship. So it brought in a little bit of extra consideration into who he would date and who would be able to come into that space. And I think it came back to a lot of like how whole and complete is this new person coming into the relationship to begin with, and how can they be additive to the experience. And I took extra steps to be really considerate to understand what kind of effect that had. And I think it comes back to what a lot of our talks come back to, and that's values and understanding the values of the people that you're dating. I had deep conversations with Lily to understand what was really valuable to her. And that was, you know, quality time, and knowing that as a teacher, she has limited free time. So that free time she likes to have with her partner. So I came in aware of that, and always made sure, if I was making plans with him, to know. I would always ask, like, oh, well, what's Lily doing that day? Is she free? You know, not to sort of overstep a boundary that was very clear to me. And I think that helped to foster more trust and love in the beginning stages, because I was never in a space of like demanding to be prioritized. I was allowing it to be what was most beneficial and additive to everybody's experience.
And in the end, yeah, and in the end, like the difference between the previous female who wanted to really force, like, I want to be a part of the relationship, like it was really important to her, and with Devin, it was now Devin is that important to us both. Like, things that came out of that patience, they can't be overstated. They cannot be overstated, because she didn't force the transition to happen quicker than she should have. That being said, don't allow your needs to go unspoken for too long in case they fester. If you want to transition and you're sitting holding on to it here for like months and months and months for fear that your partner's to this or the other partner's to that or whatever it is, that will fester and that will hurt. Don't hide certain parts of your needs. If you want to get to point A, but you're like, I think I'll take B and C first and see how that goes. And then you negotiate, like you might say, hey, I want A, I want to get to this point, but we don't have to get there right away, but that is what I want in the end. And you can take your transitional steps that way if you want. But if you hide the fact that you really want A and pretend that you just want B, whatever that might be, that is going to become poisonous. That really hurts, because then you're not actually working toward what's in your heart, and that's going to show in kind of weird ways.
Right. Yeah, I think it's allowing those deeper levels to develop naturally and reveal themselves rather than forcing it. But I think there is a balance between speaking up for what it is that you want and need, and not forcing it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Like if it's like if the previous female had been like, look, I really want to be this part in your relationship, but I'm willing to take my patience and my time to get there, that would have been a lot easier for us to work with, because we knew what she wanted in the end, and then we could have helped her on the way over. I would like to go into a breakout room right now, because ultimately what this comes down to is, what lessons have you learned in rocky transitions? Because you guys all have a lot of knowledge too. I mean, I got some, she got some, Gina got some, everyone got some. So think about rocky transitions that you have had, and it could be rocky transitions relationship-wise, or it can be outside of that. It doesn't have to be, because like I said, the lessons generally transfer pretty well. When have you had a rocky transition, and what did you learn from it? What did you learn from it? So I'm going to put us into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm going to put us into 4 rooms. So you guys will have like 3 minutes each. So it'll be about 12 minutes. I'll give you guys extra time. This is what it looks like. I'm not doing the pair deck today. I'm just doing, if you want to take a picture with your phone, I can also put this, I also will put this out. But the breakout room 1, what lessons have you learned in rocky transitions? The moderator is the person whose name is closest to the letter H. You have 3 minutes each to go over lessons you learned in a rocky transition. Time your participants. And don't worry about writing answers. I don't have the pair deck running right now. I could have it running, but I don't have it at the moment. And then we can come back and we can debrief.
Yeah, and Lily, you can put me in one of the groups this time.
Okay, and I'm gonna go into a group too. Yeah, all of us are getting in groups.
Okay.
Everyone's getting in a group together. Let's see, breakout rooms. We have 11 participants.
Something I wanted to contribute to the earlier conversation around loss, which was this idea of there always being an opportunity to create a win-win in every situation. Like, there doesn't have to be a winner and a loser, and there's a way for us to create create that win-win. And I've been trying to find the right words for it, but that's what has come up. And Shannon said it really resonated for her and her situation. And it's that we may not see that win-win immediately as we're going through this sort of like change, transition, grieving, loss period. But as long as we trust that that is going to reveal itself, then there's a better chance that it will reveal itself. Anyone else have anything come up that they'd like to share with the whole group?
I have one. I was remembering when I transitioned from, I had my ex-husband and I had been divorced. Actually, we weren't even divorced yet. I fell in love with my current partner. And when I fell in love with him, I flipped out because I was like, I'm falling in love. It's unrequited love. He doesn't love me back. He's got 2 other partners. I'm fucked. And I told him this on a phone conversation. I was like, oh my God, I'm so fucked right now. And I was like flipping out. And he's like, Lily, stop. You are writing a script for me and you're putting me in as a character and I haven't had a chance to be a part of it yet. Like, you're writing a story and you're writing a part for me that doesn't exist. You're right. I don't love you right now. I'm not in love with you yet, but we don't know what's going to happen. You got to give it time. And so that transition from being divorced and then falling in love with somebody else and that slow pace, the biggest lesson I learned was not to write scripts for my new relationships based on my old ones, and to allow new relationship ways of being to exist for me. It helped that he called me out, and it helped that I listened. Because, there are some people who would have been like, no, you're wrong. I know what's going to happen, but I wasn't like that. I was very much like, oh, you're probably right. I don't need to write a new script for myself. But then it becomes really important to be aware that you're in the transition. Oh, I'm falling in love. Oh, my old script is that X will happen. Let me choose a different script. And this goes back to what Devin said earlier. Don't let your previous experiences condition the new ones that are going to come, because then your transitions are always going to lead to the same bullshit you just escaped. Or a good transition could end up falling in that way.
Yeah, it's that facts versus interpretation conversation too.
Yeah.
It's knowing that what we're experiencing right now, it's actually our interpretation. And one of the things that's been helpful for me is reminding myself that everything is in perfect order. And if I'm not seeing the possibility, then I can comfort myself with there must be a possibility here that I'm not seeing yet.
When you are the one experiencing somebody else's transition, they're going to be in a rocky state. Like, that's just what's going to go down, And if you're experiencing somebody else's transition, I think it's really wise to not be responsible for their emotions. And if that lack of desire, if that angry emotion lasts for months, then you might want to reconsider your tactic. But one of the biggest things I learned in my transition with my new partner is I really learned to let him be cranky and have his moment, and I could just be myself, and I was so awesome just being myself. Then in a couple hours, he's like, "You're awesome. I just remembered that. You just remember that you're really great." So, isn't that true, Devin? Isn't he like that? He's just like our cranky.
It's either that or we need to feed him. Like, but yeah, that also brings up what I just shared with my breakout group. Was that when I started dating Daniellow, I had a partner. I had an anchor. And that was part of what made our beginnings of our relationship, like you and Daniellow and I, comfortable, was that there wasn't space for this past thing to happen again, like what had happened with the previous female, of like wanting to be more of a staple in his life. It was like, well, she's partnered, so that's not going to happen. And I really thought that the end of my relationship, I don't like using hierarchical language, but I'll just say, like, my primary partner at the time, transitioning out of that, I assumed that I would have to end my relationship with him and with you. And because I approached it with like, hey, I understand that this is a big change, and I also understand if that means we're ending, that then you both had this ability to remind me of who I was to you. the way that he reminded you of who you were to him when you were going through all of that. So I think like we do have a really powerful ability as loving humans to remind the people we love of why we love them and why they're important to us, and like show like, yeah, you are valuable and you are worthy, and there is possibility here that you're not seeing because of that. Yes.
So here is now a collection of transition do's. This is the fun stuff.
Ooh.
Transition do's. Give me 1 second. Here we go. I know it's a little small, I think, because I'm not doing full screen. Oh, that's not what I wanted. This is fine. I hope it's not too small. It's for reasons of Zoom. That's do nots. Do's. Do consider losses and how to account for them. Do be clear about what you want. Or if you cannot be clear about what you want, be honest about the fact you're not clear. So you might say, there's something I want. I don't know if it's another partner. I don't know if I just need more time alone or if I actually need more sex, but I know I need something. I need something and I need this to change. I need to change. I don't know what it is. You know, if you can't be clear about what you want, be clear that you don't know.
Yeah.
Speak your intentions with clarity. It really helps. Like, it's so tempting to beat about the bush to save someone else's emotions. We are trained for that. We are trained from birth to not trample somebody else's emotions. But in relationships like this, particularly when you're involved multiple partners, lack of clarity muddies the waters, and then it creates bloodshed. Like, there's no other way to put it. It truly creates bloodshed, metaphorical bloodshed. Because that was what happened with me and my ex, is that he was never clear about his intentions, and we devolved into so many arguments that could have just been avoided had he just spoken his intentions with clarity. It really makes a difference. It hurts more at first, and it hurts you to say it. If you're transitioning, particularly a negative transition, like I'm breaking up with you, being that forthcoming and honest all in one go, it's heart-wrenching for us as well, but it creates for betterness in the long run. In the case of good but nervous transitions, approach it lightly. If you come heavy, transitions feel heavy. But if you come light, they can be light. That happens too. Stay in inquiry. If you want to transition, what do you want out of it? Maybe you want to transition from being a primary relationship to non-hierarchical, or more anarchy, where no one relationship is more important than the other, but your partner's really not okay with that. So you get to ask yourself, okay, do I really need to have no hierarchy, or am I actually just looking for more freedom? What do I want out of this? How can I get it in this transition? Whatever it is, be open is essentially what it is, which is allowing yourself to be in flow and be honest. These are transition do's. Do these things for sure. And it's really easy to know if you're not being honest if when you tell your friend about what's happening, you tell them more than you tell the partner what's happening. And that happens all the time. But then what's really cool is that you just get your friend to say, everything you just told me, go tell your partner right now. And then you've got it down and you'll be fine. So who has had experience with some of these transition do's before? Because we're going to go into a breakout room again in like 2 minutes, but would you like examples? Does anyone have examples of these transition do's? Well, I can give one that's really clear. We spoke about it with the first one. I really clearly told my current partner that I absolutely had to either be in a committed relationship with him or we had to stop being lovers and having sex. And that clarity and the cleanliness with which I delivered that is the biggest lesson I think I've had from my experience with him and with any partner ever in my life. Like, I was so clear and I was so honest and I was so not manipulative. I wasn't trying to trick him into dating me or anything. It was just really where I was at. And that is what that transition, the request for that transition with that level of calm clarity is, I think, directly led to the success that he and I have had today, even our success with Devin, because we entered our relationship with clarity. In case you're wondering, what ended up happening was he told me to wait 5 months and then we would get together in 5 months, and that's what we did. So I know that for some people, that level of clarity can take some of the romance out of the relationship. It didn't take any romance out for us. It's totally great. That level of like honesty was, I mean, and it was an ultimatum. But it wasn't meant to be mean. It was just, you know? So I'm going to put you all in the breakout rooms again. And I want you to now talk about, if you want to take a picture of this, what lessons did you learn in a successful transition that you'd like to share with others? And maybe you can use the ones that, you know, some of the transition do's that I gave you here. What lessons have you learned in a successful transition? Because I think we don't give ourselves enough credit sometimes for when we do it right. And we should really take those moments and write them down, because we're going to take those moments and move them forward and use them again. You know, we are very much a carrot and not stick kind of culture sometimes. So let me go. I'm going to go to breakout rooms.
Can you show the do's one more time? I just want to
take.
There you go. Thanks. Okay.
I just want to put another plug in for my favorite do, which is to consider losses and how to account for them for all parties, not just you, for everyone who's going to be involved in the transition. Just want to put a plug in for that one because I think that's the coolest one. Breakout rooms. I think what's so freaky about transitions is lack of clarity. And it doesn't matter if you're the one driving the transition or if the partner's driving the transition or if we're all transitioning together. If we aren't clear about what's going on, if a question pops in your head, ask it, because that's going to make a huge difference. It'll get rid of so many stories in our heads and that, you know, often just drive us crazy.
Something that came up in our group, and I'm taking a lot of specific examples and kind of paring it down to what I heard, was that there's a lot of power in letting go of assumptions. I mean, and that's the same with like asking questions, but for me, it comes up as what used to be an issue for me was expecting reciprocity or acting out of obligation, especially during transitions. And knowing that I can let go of that has always led to more success in transitions. Like, I'm doing something for someone because I love them, not because I think it's what I owe them, or expecting something because I think they owe it to me.
I'm really struck by the letting go of assumptions idea for transitions, because when we transition, I think we assume, because we always assume, that the people in front of us are thinking similarly to us, or might have the same definitions, or might know where we're going. And without clarity, they won't. They may not understand what you need or where you're going. And it is human nature to pretend to assume that people think the way we do. So I love that don't make assumptions, and definitely goes along with asking questions.
There's something I've been wanting to add, but I'm like, with a lot of things, I'm like really trying to find the right words for it. But I think with a lot of transitions, one thing that's beautiful is that we, as humans, we can reach out to our support networks to get feedback from outside of the relationship. Like if we're going to friends or even like past lovers or whatever to discuss the situation, that it's great to get feedback, but to, I would say, do so in a way that you're not making choices based on what you might assume the outside world could think of what you're doing. Like if you're nervous of being judged for going through a divorce, or you're nervous of what others might think of you for making a big transition in your life, like knowing when it's important to really just be living for you and your happiness and making your own choices. And there's this, I love Brene Brown. I'm not sure anyone else like Brene Brown, but she has this beautiful exercise where she says you cut out a 1 by 1 inch square piece of paper, and on that you write the names of the people whose opinions matter to you. So I have this little 1 by 1 inch square, and I've got 5 names on there, and I know that like those are the people that I can really ask for feedback and know that they're going to be honest and truthful, and that they're going to show up for me. And I don't know, it's been powerful to to really take guidance from people who really love me and care about me, and that I love and care about, not being in fear of judgment from the world who's not playing in the same arena that you're playing in. I hope that makes sense.
Particularly when you're poly.
Oh yeah, people get opinions.
Opinions when you're poly? Oh no.
Oh.
You talk to your mom or like your grandma and they're like, what's going on in your love life? And you're like, you know, you post it on social media. I mean, at this point, so many of my friends are like, they either don't care that I'm poly or they're probably themselves, but still, it gets real funny when people are like, well, I know what the problem is that you're dating two people. And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. That's not what's happening here. That's not the issue. You're wrong. So, you know, it's fine. Anyway, that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and thank you for participating.